I remember that winter. The cold cut straight through bone, the sky hung low and heavy, and the clouds were so dark they almost looked purple. Back then, everybody in our little town was talking about only one thing: the Metallica concert. Around here, in this forgotten corner between cornfields and frozen highways, nothing that big ever happened. A show like that, for one night, it felt like the world finally remembered we existed. I had been a detective for many years by then, long enough to think I had seen almost everything. But I had no idea that concert, in the middle of a winter storm warning, would become one of the cases that would haunt me the most. Even today, whenever I hear a heavy guitar riff, I am back in that night, in that mix of euphoria, snow, noise, and silence. Because in the middle of all those screaming voices, one voice went quiet. Emily's. Emily was 21. She was one of those kids who seemed to light up any place she walked into. Messy bun, plaid jacket, eyes always shining with some new plan. She worked at a coffee shop off the highway and took classes at night, slowly trying to finish college. She kept every tip in an old metal tin with the Metallica logo scratched on the lid. Her dream was simple: see the band live just once. She talked about it with everybody. With her co-workers behind the counter. With her mother while they folded laundry. With her little brother, Kyle, always hidden under a beanie and a pair of headphones. And for a while, she talked about it with her ex-boyfriend, Ethan. That relationship had ended badly: jealousy, shouting matches in parking lots, neighbors calling the station when the arguments dragged into the night. At the time, it all looked like typical young couple drama. Messy, loud, but not unusual. Over the years, I learned the hard way that what people call drama is often just the polite word for something much darker boiling underneath. During the week of the show, the weather reports changed their tone. The meteorologists stopped sounding casual. They used colder words: falling temperatures, heavy snowfall, strong winds. Then came the phrase that changed everything, an official alert repeated again and again in that calm, distant voice. Winter storm warning. A severe winter storm warning meant icy roads, reduced visibility, danger especially for anyone driving at night. The mayor called the event organizers and suggested postponing the show. But the tickets were sold, the band was on tour, contracts were signed. You know how that goes. The answer was polite but firm. The show would go on, snow or no snow. At the station, we prepared the best we could. Extra patrols on the roads, officers on standby. We knew that mixing alcohol, frozen highways, and a massive concert was asking for trouble. But we were not prepared for the kind of trouble that actually found us. On the day of the show, the town felt strange, part celebration, part alarm bell. Cars poured in from neighboring cities, old buses full of kids in black jackets and band shirts, gas stations and diners packed with people singing along to Metallica on the radio. The arena parking lot turned into a sea of red brake lights. Breath turned into white clouds in the air. The smell of gasoline, snow, spilled beer, and excitement hung everywhere. I was there on duty, walking around the outside of the arena, talking with private security, coordinating our patrol cars out on the highways. At first, the snow was gentle, small flakes drifting under the yellow light of the lamps, almost pretty. But I know how to read a winter sky, and that sky was a promise of trouble. Inside, when the band finally took the stage, it felt like a bomb went off. Screaming, hands in the air, some people crying from pure emotion, and that wall of sound, so loud it punched you in the chest. Emily was down there in the crowd, on the floor with Kyle. They had managed to get fairly close to the stage. She sent a message to a friend just before the first song. We saw it later, when we checked her phone. "I have waited my whole life for this." Those were the last words of hers that we ever got to read. The storm did not wait for the show to end. Outside, the wind gained strength and snowflakes turned heavy, wet, and mean. Cars started to disappear under a white layer. The winter storm warning repeated over and over on the radio, in our patrol cars, like a broken record. The road to the north was already slick. A few cars had slid into ditches, minor crashes, no serious injuries, not yet. Inside the arena, no one seemed to care. Metallica was playing loud enough to drown out the world, lights cutting through artificial fog and little bursts of real snow that slipped in every time a door opened. Thousands of voices were shouting the same lyrics in unison. Somewhere in the middle of that organized chaos, Emily vanished. According to Kyle, they were together almost the whole time, jumping, bumping into strangers, laughing. Near the end, he said he needed to hit the bathroom. Emily told him she would stay right there, by the barrier. "Go, I am not moving. I got my spot." When he came back a few minutes later, she was gone. At first, he thought she had just been pushed sideways in the crowd, or maybe she had gone to grab some water. But then the final song ended, the lights came up, people started moving toward the exits, and there was still no sign of her. Kyle walked circles around the floor, asked strangers if they had seen her, called her name while his voice was swallowed up by the noise of people leaving. Nothing. He tried calling her phone. No answer. He sent messages. No reply. The storm outside was getting worse when he finally went to a security guard and asked for help. Not long after that, my radio crackled with the call, a possible missing person inside the arena. When I met Kyle, he was shaking, and it was not just from the cold. His eyes were wide and red from crying. His voice kept breaking. She was right there, sir. I swear. I just went to the bathroom. When I came back, she was gone. People get separated at big events all the time. They go outside without telling anyone, leave early, follow some new friend. Most of the time, they turn up a few hours later, embarrassed. But there was something different about this one. It was the way Kyle spoke, the raw panic in his voice, the storm raging outside, and most of all, Emily's history with her ex. I asked him the question I always ask in those situations. Is there anyone who might want to hurt your sister? He hesitated, looked down at his shoes, closed his eyes as if he needed to decide whether he could trust me. Yeah, Ethan. Right there, the story stopped being about a girl simply lost in the crowd. It became something else. While the crowd pushed toward the exits, we started our search. First the restrooms, then the food stands, the medical area, emergency exits, storage rooms. We called her name and showed her photo on our phones. Have you seen this girl? Most people barely looked. They were rushing out, trying to beat the snow, trying to get on the road before things got worse. The storm outside pounded at the walls, wind whistled through every tiny opening, making the metal beams hum. Recorded messages on the sound system told people to drive carefully, to take it slow going home. What nobody said aloud was that, for Emily, going home might already be off the table. We called in our search team as soon as it became clear she was not in any of the public areas. The word missing has weight. It is a quiet confession that something is completely out of control. I requested access to the security cameras. The arena technicians were already overwhelmed, trying to keep systems from failing in the storm, but they cleared a small control room for us, full of monitors showing black and white footage. We started going backwards through the night. Before the show, crowds entering, lines at the doors, faces flushed from the cold. There she was, Emily with Kyle. They went through the bag check together. She joked with one of the guards, flashing the devil horns hand sign, laughing. Nothing strange. No obvious threat near her. We moved forward in the footage and found them again, now on the floor, pressed in with the crowd. Then we saw Kyle push his way out in the direction of the bathrooms and disappear from that camera's view. Emily stayed, alone, singing and jumping. A few minutes later, a figure appeared behind her. Hood up, dark jacket. The camera quality was bad, but we could see the person tap her shoulder. She turned, looked startled at first, then smiled. They talked for a few seconds. The hooded figure gestured to the side, signaling for her to follow. Emily hesitated, looked around, then nodded. They moved out of the frame. That was the last time we saw her alive. You learn, with time, to watch footage like that without letting it crawl under your skin. But that night, looking at that young woman following someone out of view, I felt a knot in my chest. I knew the storm was our enemy. Every minute, the snow outside was erasing clues we had not even seen yet. Heavy snow covers tracks, softens footprints, blurs tire marks, hides everything that might point to the truth. The winter storm warning was not just a forecast. It was a countdown. We froze the image at the best frame we could. The hood still covered most of the person's face, but for 1 second the side profile was visible. Part of a chin, the line of a mouth, a hint of a nose. It was not enough to say it was Ethan, but it was not enough to say it was not him, either. I could not rely on a feeling, so we moved. One team drove to Emily's house, to talk to her mother and collect more photos. Another team headed to Ethan's address. The storm was brutal by then. Cars crawled along the roads, tires slipping on ice, wipers squeaked and groaned across frozen windshields. That sound, tires on packed snow, stayed with me for a long time, a muffled grinding like the world itself was complaining. When the patrol car pulled up in front of Ethan's house, his driveway was empty. No car. Near dawn, the call I had been dreading finally came in. A maintenance worker from the arena, his voice shaking, said I needed to come see something. I drove there myself. The wind sliced through my coat. Snow reached halfway up my boots. Behind the arena, near the loading area, the worker pointed at the ground. There were strange marks in the snow, a disturbed trail, uneven, like something heavy had been dragged. The beginning of the trail was already blurred by fresh snow, but we could still follow it part of the way. It led toward a row of crates and old equipment near a metal container. That was where we found her. First Emily's knit hat, then her body. She was half covered in snow. Her face was pale, eyes not fully closed, a dark bruise blooming around her neck, a split in her lip. Her hands were stiff from the cold, fingers curled around nothing, a cheap ring in the shape of a lightning bolt still sitting on one finger. The silence in that moment felt wrong. Even the wind seemed to quiet down. I have seen too many bodies in my career, but there is a special kind of weight when the victim is young and dressed for a night of music and joy. Our forensic team arrived. The medical examiner took longer than usual to speak. He was used to car wrecks and drinking-related hypothermia. This was different. Everything pointed to strangulation. After that, the body was most likely dragged and abandoned there in the freezing cold. For most people that night, the storm was just a miserable inconvenience. For the killer, it was the perfect partner. Heavy snow, low visibility, poor lighting, almost no one walking back there. The more the snow fell, the cleaner the scene became. The hours that followed were a blur of interviews and screens. We pulled footage from the outside cameras, talked to security staff, questioned workers who had been in the loading area. On one of the exterior cameras, grainy and glitchy, we saw something useful. A small dark car turning into a side entrance shortly before the concert ended. It was not one of the authorized vehicles, but that night, with traffic snarling, no one had paid attention. A bit later, the same camera caught two figures near the back of the arena.